Hello everyone, thank you for watching my video today, and if you are new to GreenMangoes, please help me out and hit that subscribe button. For today's video, I will be sharing with you 5 tips on how to successfully grow loquat in your garden, whether in a container or in ground. So for those of you who have never seen a loquat tree before, loquat trees from Asia, from tropical environment, and you can certainly grow in your backyard whether it's tropical or not, but there are certain things that you must follow in order to keep it healthy and keep it adapt to your environment. For tip number 1, the light. For loquat tree, it needs at least 6 hours of sunlight, but don't be mistaken that because it's required 6 hours of sunlight doesn't mean you should expose it to an area where it gets full sun. For the most part, when you go to a nursery, or you can read the text of this plant, it says full sun, but it depends on where you are at. If you are in an area like me where it gets about 10 hours of sunlight in the summer and it gets up above 100 degrees, and you plant this on the west side of your house or your garden, which means it gets a long exposure to sunlight, it will get burned. And you can see this is the leaves that still remain from the summer. It gets brown burns from the tips here. The new growth is very healthy. I can show you later on when I bring the camera closer, but the sunlight, the long sunlight, will kill the plants and will make this very dry, and most often the time it will suffer from the heat and get stressed. So if you are growing this whether in a container or in ground, especially when you go in ground, make sure you plant it in an area where it gets partial shade. So a rule of thumb is morning sun and afternoon shade. That will help this loquat thrive very easy. And if it gets really hot, give it some protection. Give it a shade cloth to protect this during the summer heat for at least a year or so it adapts to the environment, and then on the second year and the third year you can remove it, and it will do fine. Tip number 2 is temperature. This loquat came from tropical environment, which means that it won't do well in frost. It will probably die in the frost. So it can get down all the way to about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So if anything under that, the flowers will fall off and will die. It won't set fruit. So if you grow loquat, please remember when it's about 30 degrees or above, you are fine. The flowers will set fruits in the winter. But if it falls anything under that, if you grow in the pot, bring them inside or protect them by covering them up. Or if you grow in the ground, please have a cover, a blanket or a top or anything to cover it up so it won't get cold. Wrap a Christmas light around them so it will get some heat and it won't suffer from stress for anything under 30 degrees. As well as the heat, if it gets anything over 90 degrees, it could potentially suffer from the heat and stress. So in the summer, especially when it's still a young tree, cover them up and have them protected from the heat for at least a year or so. Other than that, this loquat tree requires a good amount of sunlight, and the temperature range between 30 degrees to 90 degrees, and it should be fine. Tip number 3 is water. For the first year when you plant this loquat, make sure that you keep the soil very moist. The soil should stay moist, otherwise it won't get enough water, so it produce fruits for you, new canopies, new growth for you. So rule of thumbs in the summer, depending where you are at, the location where you grow the loquat. For me in Las Vegas, in the summer, sometimes I even water twice a day because it's in a container, and it gets dry really fast. And I water once in the morning, about 5 to 6 in the morning, and in the evening again when the temperature cools down. And when the temperature drops down to about 80s or so in the fall, I cut down the water to every other day. And in the summer, again in the fall, when the flower is starting to bloom, you do not want the soils to dry up. In the winter though, you want to cut back to once every 3 days. You don't want the roots to be too wet, but make sure that you check it often to make sure that there's enough moisture level in the water, because this is an evergreen. The leaf doesn't drop in the winter. It continues to grow, so you still need to water even though it's in the winter. So again, when it come back to the spring during the growing season, starting when the temperatures start rising again above 50-60 degrees, continue to water every other day or so to make sure that it gets enough water. It's still producing fruits for you and having new growth. Tip number 4. Tip number 4 is the soil. Loquat trees grow both in alkaline and acidic soil. So it's pretty much, it tells you that it can adapt to any soils you throw at it. In a container, grow any kind of potting soil as long as it drains well. If it doesn't drain well, then the root will get suffocated, get wet feet, and then it get rotten away and die. As long as you give it a good drain, very well drained soil, it should do fine. And keep it fertilized every month or so if it's in the pot. And for the soil that I use mostly are from Fox Farm. If you used to go to the big box store, buy Miracle Grows potting soil, it won't die. It will still do fine. It won't do as well as other trees that you use in better potting soil such as Fox Farm, or you can use any potting soil that is local to your area where the trees can adapt faster. And the tip number 5 is fertilizing. For me, in this loquat tree that I grow in a pot, I fertilize every month starting from the spring, because the soil that I use drains very fast. When I water the pot, the water will immediately escape to the bottom of the pot. So because of that reason, fertilizers get washed away quite often. So I fertilize in the springs with a balanced fertilizer once every month. And then I also add Epsom salt to this tree. Magnesium sulfate will help, and then also I add seaweed extract. In many other videos where I use on my tropical trees, seaweed extract will help build a better root system, a more better canopy, and more greenery leaves. So make sure that if you have access to Epsom salts and seaweed extract, add them, and your trees will be very happy. During the blooming season in the fall or so, I add bone meal. Bone meal has high amount of phosphorus in it, and it helps the trees to bloom and set fruits for you. So if you grow in ground, plan your fertilizing schedule about 3 times a year, during the spring, the summer, and again in the fall. That's it. You don't need anything more than that. But if you are growing in a pot, make sure you do fertilize it every month, at least every month. I can use, sometimes I do a foliar spray every other weeks as well to help the loquat get more nutrients faster. And I generally use liquid fertilizer on my loquat in the pot when it starts blooming, because that's when it gets the nutrients the fastest and starts sending fruits for me. That's it for the 5 tips. But if you can see here, this loquat smells really good when it blooms. It smells like perfume. So if you have one of these at home, you will enjoy all the beautiful flowers. It's not very pretty in color, but it's white and it has a beautiful scent to it, and it makes your yard smells really good, especially when you come closer and smell these flowers. Is very delightful, and the bees, the butterflies in your yard also love them, and my kids, my wife, and everybody at home love this loquat. And for this video, this loquat still blooming, and now in mid-November, I will make sure to bring this inside or under the covered patio so that it protects from the wind and the cold. Hopefully this will set the fruits, and in a couple months or so I can make another video showing you how delicious these fruits are. Thank you for watching today, and those are the 5 tips again. Number 1 is lights, temperature, water, soil, and fertilizer. Remember, if you follow those 5 tips, your loquat should be grown very well. They're not very hard to maintain, not very hard to keep, and pretty hardy. Doesn't get stressed very often. Just keep it away from the cold and keep it away from the heat, and you should be fine. I hope you will have success growing loquat as well. And if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up, and thank you for watching. See you next time.